Hi, I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen of Madison Maximize Living. In most cases, achieving improved and even optimal health is easier than you think. Have you ever known what to do for your health, but you just can't seem to get it done? Perhaps better strategies, a little more discipline, and some coaching could make the difference. Join business coach Ian McFarland and myself on Maximize Living as we discuss business principles that can help you build a healthier body. Coming up next. Welcome to Maximize Living. Our guest today is Ian McFarland, author of the book, The Power of I Am, So I Can. How to use your life experiences to drive your life's legacy. Ian is one of 1,000 coaches with Action Coaches, and he's actually won the Global Hall of Fame Award in 2012, and usually ranks at the top of the coaching group for many, many years. So welcome, Ian.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pat.
Ian, why did you write this book? What were you thinking?
Well, about 2 years ago, March 2 years ago, when I turned 75, I decided that I needed to document more about my life, primarily for my family, my kids, family, relatives, to really let them understand me a little more. So that's why I decided to write it, and then it took me 2 years to get it completed. However, the interim period was March of last year. I set a new date to have it done, which was September 24th last year. And the reason for that was I wanted to dedicate it to my wife for our 50th wedding anniversary, because she has been such an important part of my life.
Oh, that's wonderful. I enjoyed reading the book thoroughly, and I noticed on the front cover there's a picture of a young man with some animals. Can you tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah. That was an important part of my life. It was in the outback Western Australia during World War II. My mother took me to live with her uncle, my great uncle, on his sheep station to get away from the potential threat of the attack on the Air Force Base where my father was. And when I turned 4, my great uncle gave me the job of every morning at sunrise going to the paddock outside the house, which held these 50 prize sheep, to let them out. And then by sunset, I had to have all 50 back in that paddock.
At age 4, you weren't even as tall as the sheep.
No, not even as tall. And so how does a 4-year-old round up these 50 sheep that are in a field so wide you can't even see it? I had my sheepdog, Red, and just give Red the signal. He'd round them up, get them in the gate, and I'd latch the gate. So
your first business lesson.
It was my first business lesson. I've reflected and said that was accountability, and it was also the principle of delegation.
Yeah.
I can't do it myself, so you delegate to someone who can.
And I think that's such a powerful thing for kids to be helping early on. And when preparing for the show, you mentioned several stages and people that could help. Who would that be?
I believe that it's important for the parents to give their children, their kids, responsibilities and jobs like that, because it is implanted in me DNA-wise now, and hopefully I've passed that on to my kids. Hopefully I can pass it on to people I'm coaching.
Exactly.
The importance of, from early stage in life, having accountabilities.
And Ian, you're from Australia, and there's an interesting history. I didn't realize that there were no people in Australia until 164,000 people were sent there as convicts, and started as a convict colony completely.
It was formed as a colony, convict colony, and what happened was they couldn't get back. Once they had done their term, couldn't get back, so they started small businesses and became part of the community. So in effect, the grassroots came from people that had to grow up from nothing.
Wow, it's just a wonderful example of how you can take anyone and improve. Quite a history. I see in your marketing you affected your work with Pizza Hut.
Yes.
You wore Nike shoes before they were Nike.
Yes.
As a test. You worked for Heinz and Polaroid. You helped get Crest in dental offices.
Yeah.
You've had a huge amount of experience. One thing that stood out to me was you had a company called Spasm.
Yeah.
And did that work in Australia? Because I'm not sure a company name called Spasm would work in the United States.
It actually was the initials of the partners. What we did is we took that. It was a name to be easy to remember. It created an impact, but also we named our building because we moved into a building developed for us particularly, and we called it Squizzy Taylor Square. Squizzy Taylor was the Al Capone of Australia. And so we got attention in the news.
Awesome. We'll be back with more for Maximize Living in just a minute.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Send your email to drpat@wi57.tv.
Welcome back to Maximize Living. We're here with a business coach, Ian McFarland, author of The Power of I Am, So I Can. Ian, let's talk about some of the business principles or life principles in your book that can even be helpful in such things as finances and healthcare. You mentioned in your book 5 drivers of success, one of them being the line of choice. What would that be?
Okay, the line of choice says that I am responsible for the decisions I make. So I'm the one making the choices as to how I live my life and what I do. And you could look at it from two parts. The above the line is the positive aspect, and that's where you take ownership and accountability and responsibility for the decisions you take and what you do. Below the line is where you tend to blame others or make excuses, or you're in denial that anything's wrong. And a person, if they can focus on that attitude of above the line, ownership, etc., versus making excuses, I can guarantee you'll live a much more positive life.
Yes, and I just love that one because we all know people who don't take blame when they could take part of that and do be far better off. There's something in there too I thought was really interesting. I call it tap tap 2x4.
Yeah.
What would that be?
That's one I call the road of life, because what I say is if there is a problem, the problem is not going to go away, it will only get bigger. Therefore, you have to deal with it at the tap stage, as you call it. As soon as I know or sense something's not right, I need to deal with it then. It won't go away. Because if I don't deal with it then, it grows and it's like a 2x4. And to be honest, if I don't deal with it then, it's what I call the trauma stage. It's like a Mack truck hitting you. So deal with the problems when you first feel them, don't put them off.
And we see the same thing in healthcare, finances as well. We also have here the platinum rule of communication, which is a step above the golden rule, do unto others as you have done to yourself.
Absolutely.
Tell me about the platinum rule.
Yeah, the platinum rule, I sort of came to understand and live my life by that when I was in my early 20s. I had experiences to realize, to communicate, I can be more effective by communicating in a way that is the way the other person wants to be communicated to or treated. And I realized that was far more powerful than trying to communicate or treat people the way I wanted to be treated. Right. So that's what it's about. You think of the other person, not about yourself.
So much of your advertising wouldn't necessarily be done in a way that Americans won't understand when you're dealing with 32 other countries that advertise to.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It has to be different. In fact, I believe that cultural understanding is more powerful than language. So if I can understand people from different countries by their culture, communicate that's in that context, that's more powerful than if I try to learn their language and talk in their language as a second language for me.
Wonderful. And it helped with sales for them to understand the products.
I think it applies to everything in life.
Everything in life. Formula for change. This one's a little longer, but what a beautiful formula. You're dissatisfied with something, and then you have a vision to change and an urgency to change, and you have to take a first step, and then you need good support around you.
Yes.
A coach, perhaps.
Yeah. And
then have that be greater than your resistance to change, and then that's how change happens.
Yeah, right.
Can you describe a little more?
Yeah. If I have a dissatisfaction, then I'm not going to do anything about it unless I have a vision. What would it be like without that dissatisfaction? So I need to understand what would it be like. I have to have some urgency to say, right, I want that vision. Then I have to take a first step. Nothing's going to happen unless I do something about it. Read a book, go to a class, get someone to talk to about it, take that first step. But always, I believe, look for someone to support you, someone that can keep you accountable. If you follow that formula, I feel that you will have every probability of making change and breaking resistance.
Awesome. And another thing, we always hear of people thinking in the past and responding from the past. You've come up with a term called present-future mindset.
Yes. I think it's actually the most important of those 5 drivers. Most people tend to think in past, present, they're comfortable because they know what happened, they can see it, they know the influence. Truly, the people who are going to make a difference, the people who are really going to lead, the people who are going to be truly successful, it's a present-future mindset. Use your knowledge from the past, say 20%, but 80%'s got to be, where do I want to get to? It's that vision. What's the vision of where I want to go in my life, your life, or the business itself?
Seems like it's almost a magnetic power to pull you forward, that vision.
It is, yeah. and it's the execution of a vision.
We'll be back with more with Ian McFarlane.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Email Dr. Pat at cw57.tv.
Welcome back to Maximize Living with our guest Ian McFarlane, author of The Power of I Am, So I Can. Ian, great information so far. There's another idea in the book, a brain process for solving problems. Mm-hmm. We all have problems, but we aren't necessarily all good at solving them. Mm-hmm. Can we break that down a little bit for us?
Yeah, because I believe it's a process. And
is that the same as process?
You're right. Yeah, I still fall back on that Aussie accent occasionally. So it's important to do the past present to understand what has happened and why it's happened. But that's 20%. The 80% of success is the process of using that information to think through how to get to solutions. Mm-hmm. So it's important to know where you want to get to, what that vision is, what it's going to look like, and then you start to say, what assumptions do I have to make to do things to get to that point? And so I'm going to then make these assumptions. With the assumptions, then I'm going to create a plan, a specific plan around the assumptions, and that's going to show me how to get to the end result. That's the action planning.
Mm-hmm. And I see you spend quite a bit of time just exploring your options when you're dealing with a problem.
That's creating the assumptions. Okay. So you're looking at the different options to create the assumptions. Then I've got to say, what are the plans to achieve those assumptions? Mm-hmm.
And you've developed something called VCAR to help you keep you on track. Can you explain a little bit about VCAR?
VCAR, just briefly, the V is for variance, the C is for cause, the A is the action planning, the second A is accountability, and then the third is the R, reforecast, getting to the end result. So it's based on having a plan. I have a plan, I have time points to that plan, and then I keep measuring at time intervals to see if I'm on track, to look for variances, causes, actions to correct, accountability to make it happen, and then say, therefore, that will get me back to where I wanted to. It applies, I did it originally as a model, which I own, to help financial achievement. However, when I wrote this book and I said, wow, this applies to anything in life as long as you've got a goal and time elements to it.
That's wonderful. This is, applying the formula and the action. Mm-hmm. Action always seems to be a part of these formulas, right?
It is.
Accountability.
It's the only way you get things done is if you take action. You can't just talk about it.
You also use disciplined time management, and I like the way you explained that.
Mm-hmm. Disciplined time management, I think, is a critical factor for success. What it is I have a goal. I need to set a goal out. So in the future, what do I want to achieve? What is the strategy to get to the way I want to live my life, the results I want in business, the results I want in my spiritual life? As long as I have a strategy for like 2 to 3 years, where do I want to be? Mm-hmm. But I have to break it down to be able to get there. So I break it down to say, therefore, where do I have to be in achieving that at the end of 12 months? Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to break it down, so where do I have to be at the end of 90 days? Because the brain absorbs 90 days very easily and can comprehend. Then I have to break it down, so where do I have to be against that goal after 1 month? Then I break it down to 1 week. And finally, I say, so what do I have to do tomorrow to be on track for that time? That's the daily one is the hardest. And that's why I call a daily one your disciplined time management.
Yeah,
you have
it
to
is a
do it every
discipline.
day because they all build up.
But it just shows you that over time you can accomplish a huge amount towards whatever your goal is. We'll be back with more with Ian McFarland after the break.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Email Dr. Pat at cw57.tv.
Welcome back to Maximize Living with our guest Ian McFarland, author of The Power of I Am, So I Can. Ian, looking through your book, I just love the quotes in there. There wasn't one quote I didn't like. There was one that seems to be like a family quote. Do your best, then work to do better?
In a sense that is, but a variation of that, which came from my parents specifically, was at any time when I was growing up, I'd had an exam, or I'd been to the Boy Scouts and I'd gone for a badge, or I'd competed in sport. When I came home, the question I'd say, did you do your best? And I hopefully said yes every time. However, that wasn't the important question. It was the follow-up when they said, so what are you going to do differently to do better next time? And I realized in all the reflection writing this book, if there was anything that's been the foundation of my life and the way I've tried to live my life, it was always, how do I do something better?
That's awesome. Here's another one. The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Mahatma Gandhi.
Yes, and in fact it was when in the book, of course, I take the trip through India. Huge impact in my life. And I started to realize that I need to think of others, and if I can do things which are going to help other people, I'm going to get the gratitude from that for myself as well.
I'm not a product of my circumstances, I am a product of my decisions. Now that's taking responsibility.
That goes back to the line of choice.
Yeah.
I believe, which is why I call the book, The Power of I Am, So I Can. I am the one that controls the decisions. I make the choices, and because of those choices, that's who I become.
Some other resources. You got me starting reading a particular book by John Maxwell.
Yeah.
Would you like to describe what this is?
Yes, and I'm so glad that you do and the way you've received this. John Maxwell, the Maxwell Daily Reader is 1 page per day, 365 pages. Take that 1 minute every morning, read that page. It will make you, no matter who you are, what you do, you will find a way that applies to help you have a positive attitude for that day based on that 1 day reading.
Maxwell's work is awesome.
I think it's a fantastic book.
Ian, how do you want to be remembered?
That goes back to the legacy which became clear to me. I've lived my life this way. I believe I have. But in words, he helped others get results they otherwise would not have achieved without his involvement, his influence, and his inspiration. I want to help people do better themselves no matter what they are in life.
And you've done so much in your career. I just appreciate you being here. And you have a tendency to give a reward to yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
Last time you gave me a reward, I ate them all at once. I should have done one at a time. But
yeah, I believe when you do something and you do it well, you reward yourself. So I have Australian candy, so just take one. It's a Jaffa.
I want more than one.
I'm down to my last 4. But this is our reward
Jeffers,
for a
Australian
great
candy.
job today.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your helping me on the health side as well.
Thank you. Ian McFarland, a life well lived and more to come. Thank you.
Have your questions for Dr. Pat answered on an episode of Maximize Living. Email Dr. Pat at cw57.tv.
Thank you for watching Maximize Living. I hope the success and business principles we've shown you will help you achieve your best health through strategic planning, better accountability, and more discipline. Aristotle once said, health is a matter of choice, not a mystery of chance. One of the best choices you can make is to have your spine thoroughly examined with a checkup to determine if your nervous system and structure are functioning optimally. For a checkup, call 608-833-1282. For Maximize Living, I'm Dr. Patrick Andersen. Until next time, live well and God bless.